Thursday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Safety, Justin Reed, who signed recently with the New Orleans Saints, talking about his thoughts about playing Joe Flacco.
Going against a guy like that, you really want to play a lot more with your disguises. I think you do that with all of them, but you're not as worried about the dual threat. Like Shedeur, some of these other quarterbacks, you're worried about them tucking and running as much. And Joe Flacco, in the year that he is now, you're not quite as worried about that. He'll still have some mobility, but you really want to just disrupt him in the pocket. Whereas like a young quarterback like a Shedeur Sanders or a Dylan Gabriel, I want to keep them in a pocket, and I want to force them to play quarterback. I want to force them to deliver the ball and see if we can set some traps.
So the rookies will report for training camp to Berea tomorrow. Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com, Mary Kay Cabot. Her thoughts on who she thinks will be the Week 1 starter. She believes it'll be one of the two veterans.
I'm going to say Kenny or Joe right now, and it might come down to the style of quarterback that you choose to go with in the early going. If you're going with Kenny, you're opting for more quarterback movement. If you're going with Joe, you're going for the explosives. So it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, and you would be choosing a style of quarterback more than anything in that case.
And again, a lot of it will depend on what we see in training camp. Johnny Manziel, one in the long line of busts at quarterback for the Browns. This from the Impulsive podcast. His reaction to being drafted by the Cleveland Browns.
Fuck, man, I hated Cleveland. Whoa! So much. And I know that's going to be tough to hear.
Unbelievable. Caleb, you hear that? That's fucking crazy.
Dude, what a great city, bro. What a great
city. Dude. All right, listen.
That place definitely aided to my fucking depression a little bit, for sure.
I respect how blunt you are about it.
Where would you have wanted to go? In any city you could have picked.
I don't know, man. It's a tough thing to like look back at and say anywhere but Cleveland. I guess.
Feel like
this is crazy. What the fuck?
Would you take the Lions over?
No way.
No, come on,
no
bro.
Fucking way.
No
You're
shot.
I don't think Detroit. You know, it took me a while to kind of be there, and like even the beginning. You know, I went downtown Cleveland. I'm like, okay, we can work with this here.
Yeah.
They got town hall.
And then there was a casino right down the street. I'm like, this is like doable. The LeBron's coming back. We got the fucking Cavs bumping, and then that like first like real coming from Texas, and then that first like real November fucking like brutal like fucking winter.
Shocking that he washed out of the league so quickly, isn't it? Let's turn our attention to the Guardians. They'll get back in action against the Athletics over at Progressive Field tomorrow. Guardians reporter Andre Knott talking about the trade possibilities. Trade deadline just 2 weeks from today.
We had Yankee scouts following us. We had Philadelphia scouts following us. We had a Dodger scout following us. The scouts are out. The players, though, I think screamed with their actions, don't give up on us yet. And so this next 2-3 weeks are going to be huge. You know, you got the A's here. You got Baltimore. Then you got to go to KC. These next 2 weeks. So you're going to hear stuff. But if they can play the way they did the last 7 games, I think you might hear stuff about some guys coming back here rather than guys leaving here.
Still a bunch of teams in front of him in the wild card chase. They're not going to catch the Tigers for the American League Central. Kenny Atkinson, Cavs head coach, during Summer League telecast, talking about identifying players to bring in that are fits in his style.
The alignment with kind of me in the front office and coaching staff in front office is huge, right? They have to kind of understand like how important it is, you know, finding system fits. And when Kobe brought Lonzo's name to my, in front of me, I said, man, that aligns like perfectly with how we play. It's a guy that gets, makes other guys better. He's a kick ahead guy. And defends, and he's got positional size. So it's so important, and it's important at the summer league level, right? We bring in guys that fit how we want to play.
Again, the Cavs have added a couple guys that will be rotational pieces. We'll see once training camp gets rolling how those players fit into what Kenny Atkinson wants to do. Time for us to take a quick timeout. Browns are up first. Quincy Carrier, Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
Browns are up first on Sports4CLE. ESPN.com continues with their 1 through 10 rankings of positions throughout the NFL. Today it was quarterbacks that was released, and it was Patrick Surtain, again, number 1 from the Broncos, Derek Stingley Jr. from the Texans, 2. Denzel Ward from the Browns dropped in at 3 ahead of McDuffie, Gardner, Gonzalez, Horn, Johnson, the rookie Quinshon Mitchell from the Eagles, 9. Weatherspoon, 10. NFL executive. Man coverage ability, premier guy in this area relative to Denzel Ward. Veteran NFL defensive coach. Really good feet, smooth, comfortable with the ball in the air. He has been good for a long time. Has God-given talent that you really can't match. So welcome in Quincy Carrier, Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Quincy, I think some Browns fans take for granted just how good Denzel Ward is, and I get the durability, and he's been injured, but he is one of the best man-to-man coverage guys in the league.
And he hasn't really been that injured that much, right? Like most of the injury stuff we're talking about is from his first 2-3 years in the league, but the last couple of seasons he's been closer to 17 games than not. I think last year he even played 16 games for the Cleveland Browns. So he's putting together that consistency. I think his game has aged better as it's gotten older. And he's at a really nice place in his career where I think he's playing some of the best football he's ever played.
Yeah, the scary thing is always the concussions, because those are things that you kind of don't know. But I'm curious. Big question mark on defense. Is it the secondary in your mind?
It's everybody but Denzel Ward, right, that you got the questions about. Martin Emerson has been good before. Was last year an aberration, or is he going to get closer and closer to what we saw previously from him? Greg Newsome in the slot, they did some things at linebacker to try to make his life a little bit easier. Is that going to pay off for them? Well, that remains to be seen there. And then secondary, the safety position, right? Grant Delpit, is he going to be consistent throughout the year? Ronnie Hickman, is he going to be able to play that safety position the way that we need him to? There's a lot of questions here. This secondary could be awesome. This secondary could be underwhelming. But, I think it's not definite where they sit right now.
All right, let's stay on the safeties a little bit. First, it was John Johnson III. Then it was Juan Thornhill. And Juan Thornhill, a free safety that plays 2 years and has no interceptions. That's still, I don't get that. Browns had 4 interceptions as a team. Is it as simple as the safeties didn't play well?
I think a lot of the low interception numbers are just because how safe teams like to keep it when they're going up against Myles Garrett, right? Like, you're not going to hold the ball and throw it downfield a ton when Myles Garrett is bearing down on your opposite tackle's shoulder, right? Like, that's just not something you're going to do. So I think teams tend to play a more conservative style against the Cleveland Browns, and that keeps interception numbers low. That being said, you want the Browns to have lower success rates against them in those kind of situations than they have when it comes to the secondary. And I think that's kind of the bigger problem there. I can understand when you got a pass rush like the Browns, you're not going to get a lot of interceptions because you're not going to get a lot of downfield throws. But you should get a lot of other opportunities that should come your way, right? Pass breakups and that.
So let's talk a little bit about the linebacker room. Obviously, losing JOK is not going to help. It's going to hurt quite a bit. What's the ceiling? How good can that room be?
I think this could be a really good linebacking room. One, Jason Tarver's done an excellent job with this room, and he's been given more this year than he's ever had before. It's unfortunate JOK is not healthy because I think he would have been a tremendous help to this team. But Carson Schlesinger is handpicked for Jason Tarver and what he wants to do. Devin Bush was pretty solid in limited time last year. Jordan Hicks was really good for this team, and you're bringing in a veteran like Jerome Baker on top of young guys who show some promise like Mahmoud Diabite. This is a 5-deep room. You know, this is a pretty good room here for the linebackers. And then you add on top of that, Dave, they're getting solid defensive tackle play with good defensive tackle depth, so that should make their lives a lot easier. I think this is going to be a pretty good room.
What about the defensive line? I'm excited about it. I like what they did with it. The two young guys at the edges, Wright and McGuire, I'm intrigued. I want to see another step. But what do you think? How good can the defensive line be?
I think the most exciting thing about this defensive line is outside of Myles Garrett, you have the potential to have Mason Graham, who's going to be on a rookie deal for the next 5 years, Mike Hall, who's going to be on a rookie deal for the next 3 years, and then Isaiah McGuire, who's going to be on a rookie deal for the next 2 years, all kind of hold down that defensive line and be young, youthful, and cheap next to Myles Garrett. I think that's the ultimate goal there for the Cleveland Browns, is to have good, youthful, young, and cheap players there to kind of fill that rotation while you're paying Myles Garrett top of the market money. But yeah, I think this defense could be really, really good. This defensive line specifically, right? Mason Graham has potential to eventually become a all NFL caliber player. I do think we have to kind of understand that defensive tackles are going to take a little bit more time to develop, right, than regular positions. That tends to be a 1, 2, 3 year project there. But Mike Hall might be ready to take a step here, right? You got Shelby Harris, you got Malik Collins, right? Some veterans in there that can fill some roles, fill some gaps there. And then you have Isaiah McGuire, who was one of the more promising young edges in all of football last year. If you look at Pro Football Focus, they had him graded as the 3rd best run defender of all eligible edges last season.
So let's look at it this way. Schlesinger was their 2nd pick. Graham, their 1st pick. What do successful rookie seasons look like for those two guys? What's realistic to desire from them and say, hey, those guys were really good picks?
You want them to be a part of a really successful defense, right? Individually, what their numbers are going to look like, they're not going to be the driving force. This team has Denzel Ward. This team has Myles Garrett, Grant Delpit, stars at other positions that are going to be the driving force of the success this year. But what you want them is to be able to be a big part of what is a successful defense, right? Does Mason Graham have to be the superstar in the defensive line? No, that's Myles' job, right? But if you can see where he is assisting Myles or assisting this defense along the way, then I think you're going to be pretty happy with it. Same thing with Carson Schlesinger. As long as you don't feel like, if you feel like the Browns have one of the best defenses in the NFL and these guys are contributing to that and they're not gaping like weak spots in it, then you're going to feel pretty good about them going forward.
All right, before we go to break, what are your biggest fears about the 2025 Browns?
This run game. And now more so than ever. I had my concerns about it before the Quinshon Judkins story. Now I have even more concerns about it. The reason I have concerns is because we're really putting a lot on the backs of rookies. And rookies are unpredictable, right? And we just got a dose of that right now with Quinshon Judkins. Like, rookies, you don't know what you're going to get out of them in year one, whether it be on the field or off the field. And that to me makes me a bit nervous, right? Knowing that this is going to be one of the main points of the Stefanski offense this year. If the Browns are trying to run the ball 500 times, right now with what they have on the roster, I find it hard to believe that they have 500 rushing attempts in them as a running back room.
How do you get around that? What does Kevin Stefanski do? What does Kevin Stefanski do?
I think they're hoping that Dylan Sampson is ready to go year one. I think Dylan Sampson will eventually be a good player. I don't know if he's going to be ready to go year one. I hope I'm wrong on that. When Quinshon, whatever happens with him, when he hits the field, they're hoping that he could be a feature back. And Jerome Ford can kind of fill in the blanks there, right? I think there probably should be another veteran, maybe somebody like a Gus Edwards who can kind of carry that first down back role for a little bit of time. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough. You're basically betting on one or two of these guys to emerge as plus level players in year one. And that's just a tough bet to win out on. You know what I mean? Like, it's a pretty stark parlay.
Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, Frank from Cleveland. A couple things for you. Do you think Shedeur is going to get any reps with the first team in the preseason or in training camp? And number two, I think the offensive line will be in good shape, you know, now that they're back to the old scheme. Them guys are maulers. They'll push forward. They're not drop back pocket guys, you know, only when they have to be. Let me know what you think, brother. God bless you, and I'll be in touch.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Quincy, I think Shedeur or Dylan Gabriel will have to earn first-team reps. I don't think they're going to give them out. It'll be interesting to see. They haven't been in this situation before relative to preseason games, so I'm curious as to how that plays out.
I'm sure they'll get first-team reps eventually in camp, right? Like, just to see where they're at. I tend to look at this quarterback competition as like it's really between Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and then they're leaving the door open for one of these rookies, but I don't think the intention is like, oh, let's have this be a four-way quarterback competition. I think they're really focused on that part of it, the veteran part of it for week one. And then they're leaving room for like, hey, if one of these rookies comes out and surprises us, then we'll be open to that as well. But I don't think they're going into it like, oh, we got to give all four of these guys first-team reps immediately. They'll give them first-team reps just to see where they're at in their progress, right? I think that happens often when you have a young quarterback or young quarterbacks on the roster. As far as this offensive line, will they be in good shape now that they're going back into the old scheme? That's another gamble that they're making, right? And this is why I'm like, the run game is kind of set up on a couple of gambles that may or may not work out, right? They're betting on, hey, look, we're going back to the old scheme, and that's going to make some of our older players who have not been as successful over the last couple of years get back to be what they have been. And if they're right on that, then they'll be able to run the ball because they'll have a good offensive line and they'll be fine, right? If they're wrong on that and these guys have other issues going on other than scheme, which I think there are some signs there to indicate that that might be the case, right? This team, when they were in the scheme in 2023, weren't necessarily blocking at that high of an efficiency rate for most of the year. You can point to that and be like, hey, there's reason to be concerned that that's not going to simply just fix it. So, you know, those are the kind of bets that they're making and why I'm kind of nervous about this run game, because on the offensive line side, you're making you're betting on a gamble, and then at the running back side of it, you're also betting on a gamble there as well.
The other thing that tells you they're not 100% sold on it is the four veterans are not under contract past this year.
Yeah. I mean, like, they just don't know what their timetable is going to look like, right? You know, is this going to be a team that we're going to say after the season, okay, we got Jacksonville's top 5 pick, let's get our quarterback and let's go, right? And then the time frame gets accelerated like that, or is this a team where we're going to say, hey, we probably need another year, and then we'll bring in the quarterback along with all of that, and we're going to plan for a timeline a little bit later on. They got to figure all of that out this season.
So, do you think Quinshon Judkins, with, you know, the story where domestic violence, he's arrested, does that change the outlook for the 2025 season?
It's been interesting because I think the reaction from a lot of Browns fans has been, oh my God, I thought this team was going to win 8 games, but now I think they're going to win 4 games because of this story. And I just think that's impossible to make the determination on whether Quincy Junkins was going to be so good of a player that he was going to cost or lose you 4 games, right? Ultimately, he's not Myles Garrett. He's not Denzel Ward. He's not one of these legitimate bona fide superstars at their position. So I don't know if it really changes where I sit with the Cleveland Browns. I still think they're going to be a 7-9 win team, right? Good defensive play, solid enough offense, not going to be able to score a ton of points, not going to be able to move the ball quickly, kind of a Pittsburgh style of football team that they're going to have out here. But if they get decent enough quarterback play, they could probably hit that 7-9 game mark.
So, free agent running backs, do you think they bring in a veteran? The standard, the league does not necessarily care what the judicial system does relative to Quincy Junkins. There have been a number of domestic violence things that have gone away, been settled out of court. Players still get suspended 4 to 6 games. Do you think they go out and get a veteran free agent running back?
Given that their plan is to run this ball a lot, right, I think they have to. We'll see what they end up doing whenever they get back into the building, right, and they start making these moves, which will probably be soon. But I feel like you got to do something because you can't go into the season and be caught off guard by him being suspended, right? I think that would be negligent at that point, right? And you can't go in and say, hey, our plan for him getting suspended is to play Pierre Strong more. I don't think that's a good plan or a plan either. So, yeah, I think you almost have to if you're the Cleveland Browns because a lot of what Quincy was here to do was to be that guy who can win in short yardage situations. And right now, without him being available, if he gets suspended, you have nobody who can fulfill that role. That's a vital role for this offense, given what you want to do. Is
there a name of a free agent running back that makes sense to you?
I mean, Jamal Williams is one that a lot of people go to. I kind of prefer Gus Edwards, right? Bigger body, done it more recently. Yeah, he deals with injury issues, but hopefully you're not asking him to be healthy the whole season.
The other one that comes to mind that a couple of viewers have brought up is Dearness Johnson. I don't know that I jump back into that, but I understand the thought with the familiarity with Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah, I get that too. My one thing with Dearness is he was good in 2021. That was 4 seasons ago. He has not been close to that good since then in multiple different systems, even in Cleveland. So I don't know if there's much there for him there. I'd rather go with somebody like a Gus Edwards, who I know was able to do what you needed him to do last year as recently as that. I want more of a short-fire bet. Dearness feels like a gamble based on nostalgia, and I'm not really feeling that right now for them.
All right. I know you've addressed this your show. Secret strength of Browns offense, what is it in your mind?
It's the tight end room, right? I think that's going to be something that they're going to lean on pretty heavily. We talk about the wide receiver room not being up to snuff, but the Browns probably don't see it that way because they think their number 2 receiver is really David Njoku when it comes to targets, right? He's going to get 120, maybe even 140 targets this season. He's going to be a huge part of what you're going to want to do, whether it's Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett, who have utilized their tight ends before. Joe Flacco specifically has utilized David Njoku to a great extent, or if it's a young quarterback like Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, and young quarterbacks usually like to utilize their tight end. David's going to play a huge role in this season's success or this season's failure based on his ability to live up to that role of being that veteran, reliable tight end. And we know David has had issues with being reliable in the past, but there are times where David has come through and been very, very useful for this Cleveland Browns team. On the other part of that, right, you got Harold Faden Jr., who seems to be very promising, right? Coming out of camp, everything that we're hearing, he could be somebody that you could utilize really nicely as kind of this hybrid option here. I don't think he's going to get a ton of targets. We're probably talking about 50, 60 targets for him, but 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, if he's able to get that, that's good work.
So, final year of the contract for David Njoku. Do you think he gets an extension anytime soon? How do you think that plays out?
Yeah, I think if you're the Browns, you should probably want to get at least a short-term extension on David Njoku because he is the type of player that you want when you have a young quarterback around, and whatever happens this year, you're probably going to play a young quarterback. And next year, depending on what you do in the draft, you might want to play a young quarterback. So given that that's the kind of player I want to surround a young quarterback with, I'd be interested in keeping him, especially since he's a vet.
All right. Before we go to break, also from one of your videos, you said there was a quarterback that could have saved the Browns. Tell us who it was.
Well, I was doing a redraft, and, it's an interesting scenario to think about. The Browns were in the market for a quarterback in the late round. What if they drafted Brock Purdy? What if they went and got Brock Purdy? And in 2023, instead of P.J. Walker beating the 49ers, it's Brock Purdy. Instead of it being P.J. Walker in DTR, being swapped in and out until eventually Joe Flacco came, it's just Brock Purdy the whole way through whenever Deshaun doesn't play. And then all of a sudden we end the 2013 season with 13 really successful Brock Purdy games and 5 successful Deshaun Watson games. What does that do to that dynamic in 2024? Where did the Browns go? I think it's one of the more fascinating what ifs that we don't really talk about is, hey, I don't blame the Browns for not making the Brock Purdy selection. Obviously that was hard to predict. But if you look at other places Brock Purdy could have caught on with, Cleveland is one of those places I think would have made sense for him to catch on with. It's not that different than San Francisco, offensively speaking, as far as the structure goes. And if he would have landed in Cleveland, what would that dynamic have been if instead we're talking about in 6 games, this guy kind of outplayed Deshaun Watson. We're talking about a young player on a rookie deal, Dave, who played 13 games and completely outplayed Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, the interesting.
What does it do to 2024?
Did you read the story of how they ended up drafting him? So Brian Griese was coming out of the broadcast booth, quarterback coach for the 49ers. The first thing that Kyle Shanahan gives him to do is kind of research quarterbacks. Go find me a quarterback. Brian Griese was quarterback in the league. He had done a bunch of college games. He had done Iowa State games. He starts researching Brock Purdy. Brian Griese's the one that recommended they draft Brock Purdy. So they used the last pick in the draft based on a guy that had done a bunch of his games in college, looked at him on tape and liked him, and that's how they got Brock Purdy.
And imagine if that was like Cleveland and they were like, let's take a flyer on this guy. I wonder would they have traded Brock Purdy? Because there's reason to still believe in Deshaun Watson at the end of 2023, right? We're not in 2024, we're like, oh no, he's cooked, right? We don't know that's on the table. So what do the Browns do? Do they capitulate everything to kind of build around Deshaun Watson in the same way they did in this timeline? Or if they had Brock Purdy, would they have decided, let's see where this goes. We're going to keep the offense the same because Brock Purdy was really good in this offense. And, if Deshaun can't play it, we're going to, what would they do in that situation? I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, I don't have the answer, but I'd love to know what it is. Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take one more time out of the side of the break, talk a little bit about the wide receiver position. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. So, Quincy, some developing news. The Pittsburgh Steelers have agreed to a 3-year, $123 million contract with T.J. Watt, $108 million of it fully guaranteed. So, T.J. Watt gets his money.
Hey, I'm good for T.J. Watt. Pittsburgh, I think they were in a position where they had to do it, right? Because he is such an integral piece to what they've been doing defensively and what they've been selling that they're doing defensively. You made all these trades to get older this offseason so you can win now, I guess. And it wouldn't make sense if you're like, all right, we're going to do all this stuff, get 3 years older at safety, get 2 years older at wide receiver, and then say no to TJ Watt, right? Like they kind of have to do it. And they got like 5 years older at quarterback as well. So, they're really putting a lot into this year. And I think it's important that people not evaluate Pittsburgh as this team that should go over, the bar for them is over 500. I know that becomes real intoxicating, but look at what they're doing. This is a team that's going all in this season on trying to be a contender. And I think if they don't reach that contender status, people should talk about it as a failure.
All right, wide receiver room. Do you think it's as bad as people say?
I don't think the Browns are just going to lean on that wide receiver room to the point to where it matters as much. I think if we're talking about options here, you're going to throw the ball a ton to Jerry Jeudy. You're going to throw the ball a ton, like we discussed with David Njoku. There's going to be some targets there for Cedric Tillman. Like the bottom of when you try to cut these pass attempts, right? The bottom of the wide receiver room starts to matter a lot less because you're just going to care about being top heavy. Now, if you have an injury or something, then that's obviously going to affect things, but that always is going to affect things. But I don't think that the Browns are going into this worried as much about their wide receiver room because they feel like they can make up for it with other positions.
Yeah, that does make sense. Fannin and Sampson potentially. What about Deontay Johnson? What do you think about that move?
I've been thinking about this more and more, right? So if Deontay Johnson does make the team, right, he's battling with Jamari Thrash. Jamari Thrash plays that Z wide receiver position. Now, in the Brown system, it's going to be Jerry Jeudy in the slot, right? That's what he does. He plays the slot. He's excellent at it. Then you're going to have Cedric Tillman at the X, and then you're going to put Deontay Johnson at that Z. Now, the Z position in the Cleveland Browns offense is a lot of cardio, right? It's a lot of running the 9 on dagger, right? A lot of what they call clear outs, right? Like you're just kind of clearing out guys, pushing safeties back. It's a lot of what Elijah Moore did in Cleveland, right? Does that sound like something Deontay Johnson has had a history of being okay with? He might be okay with the ideal of it now because, yeah, he might get this is his last chance in the NFL. But, man, I don't know. I feel like he's told you who he was all last year. And I know people want to believe in change, and I'm a believer in change. But the truth about change is that it doesn't happen like this. You don't have one bad thing. It's not a movie, right, where you have one bad thing happen to you and you go, I realize now. And then you just change how you operate for the rest of your life, right? Like we all know from being human beings, change is gradual over time, and you have setbacks here and there, right? We're asking this dude to come here and accept the role that we know he's not going to want to take, which is the cardio role, the Browns wide receiver room. And we're just like, yeah, he's going to get over everything that like cost him being on the roster of like 3 different teams last year, 2 of them playoff contenders, so he could be a productive member of the Cleveland Browns. I just see that not working out. Maybe I'm wrong here, and I would love to be wrong, and the power of growth is stronger than what I'm saying here, but I don't know, man. I think we're asking a lot of emotional maturity and expecting a lot of emotional maturity out of somebody who has demonstrated that has been a problem.
Yeah, there would be some questions. I would agree. 2025, which players have the most to lose or gain for the Browns?
Most to lose, Martin Emerson. You remember Donovan Peoples-Jones? Oh, Martin Emerson feel like he's in that same kind of limbo that Donovan Peoples-Jones was. We're like, oh, he's going to get paid. He's going to get this money. And the next thing you know, he get traded to Detroit. You never hear of Donovan Peoples-Jones again. That could be Martin Emerson. He's in that exact same spot of his career. On the flip side of it, Martin Emerson could play really good, hit the free agent market, and get a big deal, right? This is a big corner, 3 good years out of 4, super young. So that's going to be the guy I think on this roster has the most to gain or lose, Martin Emerson. He can break out and get that big deal, or he can not break out and really just kind of fizzle out.
when you look at the season for the Browns, what does a successful season look like? How do you judge it? Okay, this has been a success in 2025.
Yeah, I think this season is going to be all about having confidence in our ability to develop a quarterback, right? And I think you want to leave this season feeling better about Kevin Stefanski's ability to do that, about Andrew Berry's ability to evaluate that. Like right now, I'm not confident in this front office regime's ability to be able to bring you a franchise quarterback and develop him properly. I don't know if that's something they're capable of doing because what we have seen from young quarterbacks has not been promising from this front office. Now, it's not been definitive because we're talking about Dorian Thompson-Robinson, a 5th-round pick that they weren't invested in at the time. They were more invested in, obviously, Deshaun Watson during that time period. So a bit of an asterisk is on the one time that we've seen them with a young quarterback, but it hasn't been promising. And that's what I want to see. I want to end this year feeling like Kevin knows what he's doing with the young quarterback, that the Browns know what they're doing. And maybe we don't have the answer. Maybe we do. If we get the answer at quarterback this year, I'd be thrilled. I don't care who it is. If the answer emerges, I'm going to be thrilled. We're going to dance about it, right? We're going to throw the parade. But as long as you feel like, hey, I like what they've done with Dillon Gabriel. He's at a point to where he can start next year if we need him to. Or I like what they've done with Shedeur Sanders. He's at a point to where I feel like he can start if we need him to. If you're at that place with this team, then you feel so much better about, hey, if they take a chance at a guy in the first round, their ability to hit on that. Because right now, I think that's the main focus of this team. They got to figure out what's next at the quarterback position. And in order to find out what's next, you got to have a good feeling about their ability to identify that because they have not given you much confidence.
So how good do either Gabriel or Sanders have to be for you not to, if you're drafting, if the Jacksonville pick is 3rd or 4th or 2nd, and there's a stud quarterback sitting there, how do you not take him?
Oh, there's no way. Like, I'm just gonna make this clear. If there is a Jaden Daniels in the draft next year, and the Browns have the ability to draft him, it does not matter what happens with any of these rookie quarterbacks this year. They will draft that guy, and that's what you're supposed to do. If there is somebody you have identified in the draft as not just a starting quarterback in the league, but somebody you truly believe can be a top 10 or top 5 quarterback in the NFL, right? If Joe Burrow's in this draft or something like that, then it does not matter if you think you have Andy Dalton on the roster. You're going to go after the higher upside guy and see what you got with Shedeur in the meantime, knowing that, hey, if he develops in anything, you're going to trade him to build things around the guy that you really think can be a top 5 guy. In the AFC, that's just what's necessary. I made this joke with this guy, Derek Bell, who covers the Steelers the other day. I was like, the Browns can have Justin Herbert and still be the 3rd worst quarterback team in the division right now. Like, that's how high the bar is in the AFC for quarterback play. So, yeah, I agree with you, Dave. If there's a absolute, like if Arch Manning is everything that people say he is, and the Browns have to pick to go get him, and the Manning family is giving you the green light to go get him, you're going to draft Arch Manning. It does not matter if Shedeur Sanders had a pretty good season or if Dillon Gabriel had a pretty good season. But if we're picking 15th, if we're picking 20th, and maybe that Jacksonville pick is somewhere in the teens as well, then all of a sudden it does start to matter what these rookies look like. And are you really willing to trade up just to add some pieces, or do you want to go with the Jalen Hurts model and just throw things at these guys to make them as good as possible? That's where I think it starts to matter, right? But if you had outright got the pick to get the guy, then you take the guy. But this is more or less if you finish with like 7 to 9 wins and you're not in that top 10 pick conversation, then what do you do at quarterback, right? Do you reach for the 4th best guy in the class, or do you just sit with what you got? That's a more compelling conversation. I think that's where it starts to matter a lot more.
Couldn't agree with you more. Quincy Carrier, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Quincy.
No problem, Dave. You have a great rest of your day.
Quincy Carrier, make sure you check him out. Always really good and insightful Browns coverage. Untitled, Unfiltered. Make sure you check him out. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report up next. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I'm calling to talk about the Quinshon Judkins arrest. Everybody wants to place it on Kevin and Andrew, but everybody doesn't understand that, yes, this team lacks leadership, but Kevin has talked about the standard, Andrew has talked about the standard, and also we have to understand that, yes, even though that they are NFL players and they know what they're getting themselves into, they're still young. Quinshon is younger than me. He still has room to grow, and he will learn from this. He will take his discipline, and I just think all Browns fans just need to calm down.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast, Barking Browns podcast. Case, I get what the caller's saying, but it's the third straight year where you've had a draft choice, and then you also had Devin Bush. We found out after the fact, so it's 4 in 3 years, and it's just, and I'm sure Andrew Berry feels the same way. It's like, can we get through a draft class and get into training camp where we don't have this kind of thing?
Absolutely. It's one thing if there are red flags and you take a chance on a guy and this ends up backfiring on you. That's not the case here at all. There were no red flags on this individual. Judkins went through the process. Everyone vouched for him. He was vetted. And you get to this process, and then this happens. But at some point, and everyone's placed the blame on Andrew Berry or the lack of leadership in the locker room, all these things. Player accountability has to start. You have to, true character is what you do when you think nobody's watching you. You can do everything you guys expect of you on the practice field, in the meeting rooms, the locker rooms, and in your media availability. And everybody will think you're a good guy. But if that doesn't carry over into your personal life, and then eventually you get exposed, something like this happens. And I'm not even saying that's what happened here, because we have to let the legal process play out and find out exactly what happened in this incident. But it's a terrible look. And if these allegations are true, it's disgusting behavior, and he will be suspended. We don't know how long, or it's really muddy because he's not even under contract.
Right.
So this is a new kind of precedent to kind of get over. And we saw this huge run of second round picks getting guaranteed money. Well, that's going to stop with him. I feel pretty confident in that. But it's at some point the players have to be accountable for their actions. And he'll have to take this punishment on the chin, and he'll have to learn from it. There's no guarantee that he will. But no matter what happens, put your best foot forward. And if this is the last time we hear of an incident like this, 6-7 years down the line, this won't be a thing. But if it's a continued behavior, he just won't be in the league very long.
So let's turn the attention to football. He was going to be a focal point of the running attack, at least I think so. What do you do now? What's the running back and run game look like as a result of this, do you think? Because even if he's found innocent, even if this goes away legally, the NFL has shown they will suspend a guy in those circumstances between 4 and 6 games.
Yeah, I'm with you. I fully expected him to be the workhorse of this committee. Now, I expected it to be a committee, but I expected him to probably see half the carries. This drastically impacts that. Now, we don't know to what degree, because we don't know what the suspension will be. But this draws, this puts the onus on Dylan Sampson, on Jerome Ford, and possibly a third back that hasn't even emerged yet. So this is, and throughout the process, I was very high on Dylan Sampson. He was in the mock drafts that I did for the OBR that we discussed several on here. He was my running back of choice in the mid rounds. And when I got a chance to sit down with Daniel Jeremiah and ask him some questions, I asked him to give me some running backs in the draft class that really fit Kevin Stefanski's wide zone scheme. He gave me 5, and Judkins and Sampson were among those. And so it's a good scheme fit. but is he a workhorse type? I don't see it in that light. So this is definitely going to be more of a committee, more onus on Jerome Ford, probably earlier in the season than we had anticipated when they drafted 2 rookies. So I still expect this to be a run-first team. You know, Judkins' suspension hurts what I think could have been a special group and probably makes them average to slightly above average if the offensive line gels. But if that happens, I still expect this to be a run-first team that's probably in the top 12 to 14 teams in the league in rushing.
And keep in mind, Dylan Sampson was the SEC most valuable offensive player. So it's not like he's a little, he's not even slight. He's not as big as Judkins, but he is a feature back. So you mentioned the offensive line. How likely do you think a bounce back is for them? What do you expect from them? I keep going all over the place. Like, I think about it, and I think they are a talented group. But offensive linemen do not age gracefully, and this group is getting right near that 30-year-old mark where you take a beating in the trenches in the NFL.
Yeah, excellent points. It depends what your definition of bounce back is. Do I expect them to be better than they were last year? 100%, absolutely. And a lot of that is scheme dependent, going back to what you're comfortable with, what your skill set is more suited for. So I do expect it from that perspective. And if you look on paper, this is an excellent offensive line. But it all comes down to health. The whole thing boils down to health. You know, and there's been an emphasis throughout the mini camps of practicing faster with more intensity. I expect that to bleed over into training camp, but not with the offensive line. I expect this to be an offensive line that sees plenty of rest days. Sans DeJuan Jones. He's the one player that if he starts getting rest days, I'm going to start getting worried. But across the line, Joel and Ethan and Wyatt and Jack, like Joel, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a rest day every 3 days. Kind of same with Jack, and the other guys maybe a little less frequently, but that gives you time to see what they have behind him. You do sign Cornelius Lucas, a veteran offensive tackle with plenty of experience. Tevin Jenkins, those are your first 2 guys off the bench, in my opinion. But you do have Zach Zinter in his second year, and Javion Cohen, Luke Whippler. These are guys that we're going to get to see because these guys are going to get rest days. But this all boils down to health. If these guys can't stay healthy for the majority of the season, I don't expect this offensive line to start all 17 games together. That just sounds crazy, me saying it out loud. But I do, if this unit plays 14 of the 17 together, I expect they'll see decent success this year.
What are your thoughts about DeJuan Jones? I'm not exactly sure why. I just have a feeling he might. I think he's going to put it all together. I think he's going to end up being one of the top 10 to 12 left tackles in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And people who watch know I have no problem admitting when I'm wrong. I saw enough when he was on the field, and I've heard enough and seen enough that I think he's about to take a pretty big step forward in his career.
Same thing. It all comes down to health, right? Like the skill set's definitely there to play left tackle. He's a commensurate pass blocker. He struggles in the run, which isn't as important on the left side as it is the right. And they're finally making the transition to make him a full-time left tackle. And he did the prerequisite stuff to get his body ready for the season. You know, and I was super worried when he had come with that knee injury last year. And when a guy is that big and has a propensity to get bigger the way he does, and he wasn't going to be able to walk and be immobile for several weeks, if not months, that worried me. You know, your weight could get out of hand, and that'll be the first thing that gets him out of the league. It won't be his skills. And I've said this since the day he was drafted. Greatness is on the table for that young man, but he has to want it. And he proved that he could get his body ready. Now it's about sustaining that over the course of what is a crazy long season. But he has the skills. So now it's about putting it to the test and staying healthy and being just someone you can rely on, be your North Star of the line. And if you're right, and if he was a top 10 tackle in this league, getting him in round 4, that'd be a steal right there.
All right, so Kyle Brandt, NFL Network's Good Morning Football. On a player on the Browns he thinks deserves much more respect than he's getting.
I was really impressed last year with Jerry Jeudy from the Cleveland Browns. He had an incredible season on a miserable Browns team, catching passes with everyone from Deshaun Watson to Bailey Zappi. You can look it up. He had a 1,200-yard season, again, on a very bad team that was not only bad but dysfunctional and broken. I get that it didn't work out in Denver like it was supposed to. A lot of guys, after that happens, they just melt away and they're out of the league. You never hear from them again. Jerry Jeudy showed up last year and was the best offensive player for the Browns by far. I liked the way he handled himself. He kind of shut his mouth and went to work after going through a lot of crap coming out of Denver. Respect it, and I think he's going to have another good year this year. I don't know who the hell's going to be throwing him the ball, but Jerry Jeudy last year had a bounce-back year, and I respect that from a guy.
Yeah, the throwing him the ball is a little bit of a concern, and that kind of brings me to my thought. A boatload, most of his production, probably 70% of his production, was with Jameis Winston as quarterback. There is some translation between skill sets between Jameis Winston and Joe Flacco. Not so much the other quarterbacks that will be under center, though.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Jameis Winston starting that stretch, we would have no idea what Jerry Jeudy even is. He had a great season in total when you look at the numbers, but if you would remember, it was like in sections, because that first 7 games, there were times he wasn't even being targeted. You know, it was like, what's going on here? And then you get Jameis in there, and they start, filtering the ball through Jeudy, and you see what he's capable of, and every different alignment from slot to out wide, like he just performed across the board. But he has to be a focal point. You saw what he's capable of with the ball in his hands. And there needs to be an emphasis to lean on him, let him be your one. And I do believe that if Joe Flacco, especially early in the season, I think Jeudy could explode this year just based on what he's already proven, what his skill set is, and just the offense, the way it's structured. There's going to be open shot plays. And if he can get loose in the back end, he's a player that I anticipate should cross 1,000 yards again, and wouldn't be surprised if he had north of 8 touchdowns.
Yeah, and keep in mind now Kevin Stefanski kind of knows the ins and outs of his game and can design plays around that, which, you can say a lot of things about Kevin Stefanski. His play design is pretty darn good.
Yeah, and with an offense that has a ton of questions, Jeudy not being one of the questions, and something that you have to lean on and focus your offense towards, like that gives Stefanski a greater length of time to really generate this offense towards what Jeudy does well. And I'm interested to see how they use him in alignments this year. Like mainly in Denver, he was a slot receiver. He actually spent more time on the outside last year as a slot, but he's fairly versatile in that way. And then if the other pieces of the offense come together on the outside, that's a player they need to move around and fight advantageous matchups and really lean on his skill set. So I'm looking forward to see how Stefanski can utilize him this season.
Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll hear what Albert Breer thinks of the Browns quarterback derby, if you will, as they get set to begin training camp. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me, the Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day, put a little play in your day.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast, and the Barking Browns podcast. Albert Breer, Monday morning quarterback, with the Browns quarterback competition and how it stands as they get ready to head into training camp.
There's a reason why they held Joe Flacco back in the spring and kind of gave him, like what I've called with you guys, a first-round bye in the quarterback competition. And so they've gathered information on Kenny Pickett. They've gathered information on Dylan Gabriel. They've gathered information on Shedeur Sanders. And they know where all 4 guys are right now. Is there going to be somebody who's going to take a jump or has taken a jump based on the work he's done and whatever it is, 40 days between the end of minicamp and the start of training camp? That's possible. But I would think, right now they've got a coherent plan. And I think what's difficult about it, guys, is this isn't a rebuilding team. They won 11 games 2 years ago. You have a lot of proud veterans in that roster who aren't looking for you to make a tournament out of the quarterback situation. And you have guys in that quarterback room who are a little bit different. I think if Kenny Pickett or Dylan Gabriel were the starter, you'd have a lot more movement stuff in the offense. You'd be kind of keying on their athleticism where, with Joe Flacco or Shedeur Sanders, you'd be playing the position in a little bit of a more traditional way.
So, Casey, Albert brought something up that I think a lot of the national media either is overlooking or doesn't want to believe. This is a roster that has some talent on it. Now, the talent, they need the quarterback because that's the most important position on a football team. But they're not going to mess around with, well, we got to look at this guy until it's pretty clear that this season has gone, in the dumper again.
Yeah, the thing with the roster confuses me because if you rewind 1 year ago, the Browns were looked at as a consensus top 10 roster entering the season. Now, we know the way the season went, and there was regression. And from more than one player, several players regressed. But none of the players that regressed were the reasons that the Browns roster was looked at the way that it is. But that 3-14 is hanging over top of you, and you even look at the projections for this year, and even Vegas, they expect the Browns to be picking in the top 5 next year. I feel that this team is going to be closer to that 11-win team of 23 than it was the 3-win team of last year. By how much? It could be negligible. It could be 4 games either way. But to me, the bones are there. But there's so much hanging over the quarterback that everyone's down nationally. I've seen, hear what Breer said right there. You listen to what Daniel Jeremiah thinks, that he thinks one of these rookies are going to start. I heard, Ryan Fitzpatrick think it's going to be Joe Flacco. For me, it all points towards Joe Flacco. It's the guy that the locker room can believe in. The proof of concept that you have from 23 will carry over into that locker room and give this team something to rally behind, because you have to have belief, especially early in the season. If you go into the season thinking, well, we're just experimenting, man, this thing will get off the rails quick. You'll lose the locker room, and you will lose your job as head coach if that happens. So it's imperative for me, unless one of these guys does take the leap. And if they do, that is great. That's a wonderful problem to have, is if one of these rookies, or even Pickett, one of these guys go and just takes the job and proves they're head and shoulders above everyone else. But if that doesn't happen, you have the break glass in case of emergency, Joe Flacco, and just let the season go through him. And then it can progress the way it needs to progress based on wins and losses.
Yeah, and it's the one, a lot of people are saying it's the safest. I think it's the most logical way to play the beginning of the season. I don't know about safest. I think it makes the most sense. Rookies report tomorrow for training camp. Shedeur Sanders in town, and you know what? The guy is involved in the community. This is, he put together a little outing at the Rainbow Terrace Apartments. That's an area where there was an explosion that displaced 100 people about a month ago. Shedeur Sanders, Mike Hall involved a little pickup game with some of the kids that live in the Rainbow Terrace Apartments. There are food trucks, there's ice, it's just a get-together. And again, it's something that he saw the desire to put together. So you know what? We beat him up for the speeding tickets. He's out in the community doing some good things.
Yeah, that's awesome, especially for the children. They're never going to forget those moments, where they got to play with an NFL player. And we hold NFL players, like, it's good to see any of them in the community, but we can't act like it's not more important for the quarterback to be the face of an organization, for him to be out there doing that. And if we're going to drag him through the mud for for getting speeding tickets, 2 speeding tickets, whatever it is, then you need to, when he does something positive, shine light on it as well. And that's tremendous. And it's tremendous for those children, and that's something that they'll always remember.
Yep, and you know what? It was his time. So he put it together and saw the need to do it, so good for him. All right, training camp underway in less than a week. When you look at it, what do you think is real? How do you determine this can translate, or this is just a bunch of stuff early on in August?
When I look at the things that I'm banking on going into the season, one is you have to play solid defense. You have to put a lid on it, and you got to hold teams to under 20 points. So I'm relying heavily on this defense going into the season. And there are some questions on the defensive side of the ball. Does Martin Emerson bounce back? And if he does, you feel really good about your corners. Is Ronnie Hickman going to take the safety job? It's apparent they want him to be the free safety. Now, they signed 2 veterans to back him up. But at the end of the day, like, they want him to take that job. How does he perform in that? Like, that's different than coming in and being a spot player, playing here and there. Is the onus is going to be on you to be excellent, especially as much cover one as they play. You have a ton of responsibilities on the middle of the field. I am less worried about the defensive end because we don't know who's going to play opposite Miles. Is it going to be Alex Wright? Is it going to be Isaiah McGuire? I feel that their skill sets will match up and they'll probably see even enough snaps. I'm completely comfortable when whoever ends up getting the most or gets the starting nod. But the offensive side of the ball is just full of a litany of questions. We talked about DeJuan Jones earlier. Who's wide receiver 2? They want it to be Tillman, but just because they want it doesn't make it happen. Is he going to take that step this year? Is Deontay Johnson going to resurrect his career? If he does, you feel way better about this room. And then obviously is the quarterback question, and that's a show in itself, and it'll play out, and we'll have to live and die every practice with, sure, like they'll be charting passes from the media, and we'll have to deal with all that. But there's enough questions to go around. The real questions for me is, can this defense be elite? If this defense can be elite, this team has a chance.
Yeah, and I do expect the defense to be elite. If they're not elite, with what they've added and who's coming back, it will be another disappointing season if this defense is not elite. Before I let you go, when you're talking about the quarterbacks, what are some of the things that if the rookies are going well, you're going to hear? And what are some things that you would be concerned if you heard about Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett?
Well, for the rookies, the first thing is you want to hear other players talk about him glowingly when unprompted. You don't want them to be responding to a question, but for them just to come out and say that, man, Gabriel's tearing it up today, or Shedeur took command in the huddle and led us right down the field. That's the kind of stuff you want to, because you're going to get coach speak. You're going to have all that kind of stuff happen, but are the other players believing in those rookies? Because if they don't, there's not a pathway for them early in the season. For the veterans, it's father time for Joe Flacco. And that's not even going to be apparent in training camp because everything's so spaced out. We really won't get to know that until we see him in games. And how does he hold up over the course of his game? Does his arm finish strong after 3-4 games? If that holds up, you feel good about who he is because of the table of work he already has behind him. And for Pickett's the wild card. I don't even know what to expect. He wasn't a player I expected them to pursue in the offseason, and they obviously believe there is a path for him or he wouldn't be here. But I don't think all 4 quarterbacks go into the season. I don't think they're carrying 4. And if I just look at it from the outside, my belief is Pickett will be the odd man out. I could be completely wrong, and I'll be happy to admit it if he proves to be a plus starter. But I just see a different path for him.
Casey Kinnamon, as always, great stuff. Appreciate you taking the time and joining us. Thanks very much, Casey.
Hey, anytime. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out. Writes for the Orange and Brown Report, also co-host of the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast and the Barking Browns podcast. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.